I've tried to sort of give it up to God and like be on his timeline. What's meant for me right now? And just leaning more into that has taken so much pressure off. Now it's like, man, it's not up to me. I got to control what I can control, and that's showing up, doing the job, putting in the work, putting in the effort, positioning yourself for that next opportunity and being ready for it. Because when opportunity slaps you in the face, you gotta be listening to know, like, oh man, this is the opportunity right here. I gotta jump on it, or I gotta say no to it.
Thank you for tuning in to the Mile 40 podcast. I am Bishoy Tadros, the author of Break Barriers and Audacious, both of which are sold on Amazon. And I invite you to join me as I engage with guests to discuss those bounce back moments that we encounter on our personal journey. Mile 40 is a forum to learn about how athletes, professionals, and leaders of all backgrounds stare down moments in life where the only option is to rise up. The Mile 40 podcast strives to remind listeners that the comeback is always greater than the setback. Welcome back to another episode of the Mile 40 podcast. Thank you all for continuing to tune in. The weather is getting better outside. We're about to hit marathon season in the spring. For those of you running Boston, London, or if you've already ran by the time this comes out, congrats to you all. If you haven't already, please be sure to hit subscribe if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast from. Check out the show notes. Pick up a copy of Break Barriers or Audacious. Looking forward to sending out more and more copies as the show keeps rolling. I am super excited to bring today's guest to you. Today I have Joe Rotondo. He's the founder of Smearcase, the first ever high-protein frozen cottage cheese, FroCo. Based in NYC, Smearcase is redefining the dairy aisle by turning cottage cheese into a crave-worthy, protein-packed dessert. As a pioneer in the category, he's leading the charge in innovating. He is based in NYC himself. He's proving that cottage cheese isn't just back, it's the future of indulgence. Thank you, Joe, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's always nice to speak with a fellow New Yorker, a fellow runner, and a fellow entrepreneur, ambitious individual.
Of course, man. I'm excited for this episode for so many reasons. First things first, like Smearcase, what you're building, I'm sure there's a lot of listeners thinking what I thought at first. How the hell did no one come up with this before? Number one. Number two, finally, a way to make ice cream healthy again. Because, as an ice cream lover myself and someone with little kids, and actually, I didn't tell you this before we got on. My toddler is potty trained now, and we are rewarding her with Smearcase.
Let's go. So, amazing.
Yeah, because we don't want to give her candy. We don't want to give her regular ice cream. We don't want to give her anything, that's just unhealthy. And we tell her, look, you poop or you pee in the potty, you get ice cream. And she doesn't know the difference and she loves it. Wow. So kudos to you, Joe. I bet you that's the first time you heard that, huh?
That's the first time. Geez, that's going to be... when we have a Super Bowl commercial, that will probably be it.
Yeah, man. So let's just take a step back because we're going to work our way up to Smearcase. Give us a little bit of background. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? A little bit about childhood.
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in Warwick, New York. It's about an hour and a half of New York City. Super rural. I grew up with across the street from a dairy farm, across the street from a cornfield. So I was just immersed in nature and playing outdoors. I was that kid that the sun would set in the summer. I wouldn't be home for dinner. And I lived in a neighborhood where I would hear my grandma screaming for me to come home to eat dinner. And yeah, I was always outside playing with my friends, playing with my dogs, participating in team sports, and just like learning the values of hard work. I grew up around brands, being fortunate enough to open up my pantry and seeing name brands. My dad has owned restaurants and delis. I grew up Italian, so pasta Sundays were a religious holiday. And just, food was a huge part of my life. Family was a huge part of my life. And being active was such a huge part of my life.
Did you have any siblings?
I did, yeah. I have an older sister. Erin, a younger sister Gianna, and a younger brother James.
Got it. And was your father always an entrepreneur of sorts?
Yeah, like entrepreneurship sort of runs in my blood. My grandfather, he owned a Burger King franchise. He owned a restaurant in Brooklyn that I walk by just about every day. And then my dad has owned bagel stores, which I worked at, um, and delis and restaurants. So they were very much operators. You know, they would go to work. They were super hands on, and that's where I get my work ethic from. Um, but yeah, like I didn't know it until recently that like wow, like entrepreneurship has always been a part of my family.
Yeah. If you think back to those younger years and watching people around you, especially your father as an operator, did you ever pick up on, or did they do their best to kind of shield it from you whenever, things may have been tough or when, they had to deal with a situation that was perhaps unexpected?
Wow, that's so funny you asked that right now because I was literally went for a long walk with my dad the other day, and he just like sort of told me his journey. My mom worked in corporate America, so very fortunate to have that sort of solid um, income. And she's an incredible businesswoman. She's an executive leader. She has done an amazing work, and I was fortunate enough, or we were fortunate enough where my dad for a little bit got to stay home and take care of us, right? Like in between businesses. Um, but yeah, like I remember there were times where both my parents would leave super early for work and get home pretty late. And like, of course I missed them. And I didn't like, I'm not going to say that they were absent parents, but to me, I saw like, wow, they're working hard. You know what I mean? It's like they're working so we can live this life. Um, so I think just like by observing, it's like, okay, this is what you need to do in order to provide for your family. And, I think like they never really I don't know if they spoke about it, but like I sensed their sacrifice for me and my siblings and probably for each other. Um, so that again, like we were provided opportunity to to be kids.
What was your relationship with like, let's call it work, whether it was like, let's say throughout high school, college, and maybe right outside of college? Like, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Wow. I mean, I wanted to be the shortstop for the New York Yankees. You know
Ha!
what I mean? You know what I mean?
I love that.
Um, I either wanted to be a rock star or an athlete. And then I told myself when I got to school, like, if I can't do either, let me make the clothes that they wear pregame, postgame, or on stage. So that's why I got into my clothing business. Um, but I started working in like sixth or seventh grade as a lifeguard. That was just like my parents really encouraged it. I was a pretty strong swimmer, and um, like I grew up doing chores around the house. Like again, I grew like in the third grade, I went to my dad's deli and made egg sandwiches on snow days. So like growing up, like I knew the value of hard work, but I also love to work. I love working with my hands. I love keeping busy and just like creating things. Yeah, so like I've been working since sixth or seventh grade, mostly as a lifeguard, and that just taught me, providing for yourself, discipline, sacrifice. Like Fourth of July, I worked every Fourth of July in high school and college. You know what I mean? And there were times it sucked, but it was like, man, I'm making money and I'm showing up.
Did you believe early on that you could be whatever you wanted to be?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
do you attribute that to, the way that you were raised?
Yeah, my parents both instilled in me like you can do whatever you want. You can be whatever you want. Like that's why they worked their ass off, right? Because they wanted to allow me to go to school. They wanted to allow me to play sports year round, have a new pair of cleats every year, and that just instilled this confidence in me. Like I wasn't the best student, And my mom recognized that. Um, so she encouraged me outside of the classroom to, put my time and effort towards sports. And like again, like this was a time where I didn't know entrepreneurship was a lane just yet, but yeah, my mom really like instilled so much confidence that like she gave me this Strength Finders book when I was maybe in 8th or ninth grade, and she like said like, fuck your weaknesses, double down on your strengths, because that is what's going to make you a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah. I love that. I love that for so many reasons. And I think that really kind of sets the stage for where time has taken you. Um, and man, just kind of I love just kind of even thinking about that kind of influence at a young age and the fact that it was your mother handing you a book like that because I think to all the parents out there listening, the young parents listening out there, like it's things like that that your children will never forget, you know, several years later, probably decades later at this point. And in terms of like how that lays the foundation for where things can go from there. Let me ask you, when it came to watching your parents interact with people, especially in the entrepreneurial space, did you pick up on, um, you know, the importance of building that EQ? You called out the fact that the books weren't your thing. You're probably smart in other ways, but did you pick up quickly on the importance of like carrying yourself emotionally through them?
Yeah, I think that it's something that I probably still deal with is, my dad probably led with a little less emotion than my mother, obviously. But my mom, she would always take me like back to school clothes shopping, and she just emphasized like you dress your best, right? Like show up confident, and that starts with your appearance. And it's just like being clean cut and putting your best foot forward. But yeah, it's cool like to reflect and like I sort of had the best of both worlds. My mom was just like this powerful businesswoman, this executive, this leader, charismatic. She, you know, she was at a position where she has a bachelor's degree and was a nurse, and she's surrounded by doctors and PhDs, but she put herself in that position and she hung with them, right? And she was a better leader for it because, you know, she didn't rely on the scientific facts or the books. Like she was like, no, let me trust my gut, my intuition, and same with my dad. Like he was very service oriented, right? So like being in the food industry, food retail industry, like seeing him interact with customers and lead his, team there, but then also seeing my mom like in the office setting, that gave me this insight to these both worlds that I think really reflected on me of like how I can show up as a leader um in the office, but then how can I show up as a leader as an entrepreneur, right? And those sort of they're so different, but they so connect at the same time. So having both those influences, I think really have sharpened me to like be able to not only lead but also do, and through my work ethic.
Well, that's really, really important because as we're going to get to, right, I think the thing that holds a lot of people up, and it was like the perfect storm of influence between how you kind of talk about your mother and your father complementing each other in their own roots, as well as probably the influence of sport, which we'll dig into, to kind of create someone who takes action. Because if I think about a lot of people with good ideas, the number one thing that holds them back is they don't know where to begin, and by not knowing where to begin, they hesitate to take action. And when you think about creating a CPG brand, for instance, something that you're doing, most people have no idea how to begin, right? Where to begin? Do we begin with the concept, the idea? Do we begin with the design? How much do we need to spend to get started? And so on and so forth. So it's always a question of the chicken or the egg and a lot of times it's just doing, and a lot of people hesitate to do. Let's talk about sport really quick. It sounds like baseball was your sport of choice growing up.
Yeah, baseball. I really enjoyed baseball. Played football um, up until maybe seventh or eighth grade, and then baseball throughout high school. I swam in high school, which was a lot of fun. That was a interesting sport because it's a team sport, but it's individual. And like you're practicing together, but you're in the water and you don't hear anything. So it's like meditative. But yeah, I just always enjoyed that camaraderie and doing difficult things as a team, pushing yourself, showing up for each other, pushing your teammates, right? Working towards a common goal. Um, yeah, I always loved being surrounded by my team.
I love that. What did you play in college?
I swam in college. Yeah,
Okay.
I swam club, so it was a little bit more fun
Uh-huh.
than competition. But like I love competing, and honestly, I love practice. Like I love the practice more than the actual competition or the game. Um, and I think that translates today. Like I love the process. I love the climb. I love the journey because that's like you get to push yourself every day.
Where did you go to college?
I went to University of Rhode Island.
Okay. I guess coming from you were an hour outside of New York growing up.
Yeah, just about. Yep.
All right, so Rhode Island must have been fairly similar.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was, like so similar to how I grew up.
Yeah.
Backcountry roads.
Yeah.
I went to URI because I wanted to be close to the beach, and I had a beautiful
Yeah.
campus.
Yeah.
And I wanted to study exercise science, so it just like all aligned. And it was a just like a 3.5 hour drive. But I go to Rhode Island still a good amount now, and it's just so similar to how I grew up.
How competitive were you?
With myself, like I'm more competitive with myself than with others.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out and get inside your head and determine during those years, particularly college, what what drove you? Was it yeah, like what drove you back then? And it could be like something stupid, but like what got you up in the morning?
Yeah, well, I think like at the beginning of the episode, you said, "Why haven't I thought about that?" I love that, and I freaking hate that. It's like, well, why didn't you think about it? Like I always say, like you go to the MoMA museum, you see a painting, and it's just a red dot on the canvas, and someone said, "Oh, I should have thought of that." It's like, well, why didn't you? I think that's what drove me is like the fear of the not. And I think that's where like my ADHD has become a superpower for me. Is like I think for a long time like I've definitely like tamed it, but like for the longest time I loved novelty. I loved like starting something new and the newness of something. Like again, like my parents encouraged me to try new things. So like maybe I was jumping around a lot, but it allowed me to be curious and to learn new things, try new things, figured out what worked, what didn't, what felt right to me. And I think through that sort of repetition, I learned a ton, but I also learned like what actually drives me. So I think like what drove me is like I just would hate to have an idea or a thought and not have it come to reality because I think I would like again like you think about yourself on the deathbed. I
Yeah.
don't want to I don't want to be thinking about 1,000 what ifs.
Yep.
I want to think about 1,000. Oh, this is what I have done.
Yeah. Did you what was your relationship like with failure?
Whew. Oh wow. I think I've had a really healthy relationship with failure.
That's fair. And where did you get that from?
I think it was just like being comfortable trying new things. I like man, I hated striking out in baseball, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
Like I was the kid that would throw shit and get really angry.
Huh.
Um, but like I I think in college I really got comfortable with like it's not failure, it's just lessons. It's like I think there's so much more to learn in a failure than a win. Um, because like it really forces you to look and like, all right, what went wrong? What didn't feel right? Where can you improve? Where can you get better? Um, and just like picking yourself up when you falter. That what are you made of, right? Like failure and grit are like so tied together.
Yeah. One of the things that stands out about you, Joe, as I'm kind of talking to you is it seems like you had a lot of it together early on. Like these are, I mean, you could be laughing and you might like, no, there's no way. But like these are lessons people don't usually learn that early in life, especially, during the college years, right? Especially, given what you're doing now as an entrepreneur, I feel like um, the fail let's go the lessons that you're probably encountering now are probably a lot different than the lessons that you encountered back then. And I have to also imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, some of the lessons now feel like gut punches as you're kind of taking them in now. So um, did you ever stray away from your belief, or were you consistent in the fact that the hits are going to keep on coming? I got to keep coming, getting back up.
Yeah, yeah. I'm by no means nowhere close to perfect, nowhere close to figuring it out. I'm gonna spend the rest of my life figuring it out. But I think the ultimate goal in life is like, how can you become the best person you can possibly be, and not tying that to external success. Um, I just kept swinging. I just kept swinging. I know I always wanted to have my own business, have my own brand, and I started to learn that like you have to get your reps in. You know, the timing, the luck, but I think the more you get up to go at bat and continue to go, like you continue to put yourself in a position to get a little bit lucky. And you're gonna get a hit at some point, but you're gonna strike out a whole lot too. But you gotta keep going. And I knew that. Like I knew that, and I still feel like my time is gonna come, you know? And um I think younger me wanted more control, but now I've tried to sort of give it up to God and like be on his timeline. What's meant for me right now? And just leaning more into that like has taken so much pressure off. Now it's like, man, it's not up to me. I got to control what I can control, and that's showing up, doing the job, putting in the work, putting in the effort, positioning yourself for that next opportunity and being ready for it. Because when opportunity slaps you in the face, you've gotta be listening to know like, oh man, this is the opportunity right here. I gotta jump on it or I gotta say no to it. So yeah, always being ready.
I love that. And you mentioned something I think is really, really important. You want to position yourself for that luck, right? Like, and I think people don't realize, and I think, again, that's a really wise thing to say and to share with the audience because there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there who uh, are reluctant to kind of let go of that little piece that they need to let go of in order to allow God or whatever they believe in the universe or that luck to come in. And I think that submitting yourself to that is just incredibly mature, wise, and something that people could certainly take away from. I know you had mentioned earlier you dipped your toes into the world of clothing after college, right? Talk to us a little bit about that venture because I didn't know about it.
Yeah, that I always again like my mom taking me back to school shopping, really encouraging that sort of creative part of myself, I guess. Just like I was so particular growing up. from sports, like the Deion Sanders philosophy, wanted to look like Derek Jeter, um, looking good, playing good, feeling good. So yeah, I always like put a lot of effort into like how I looked, how I wanted to portray myself, just like having that creative outlet. And like, man, when I when I went to college, like I had no idea what I wanted to do, what I wanted to be. Like I had an idea, I had ideas, right? But I went to school studying exercise science because I just know I like sports, and I was like, oh, okay, this like do what you love, and and so I find myself there, and it's like all science classes. I'm like, I don't know if this is. I wasn't the best student, um, but I always knew like I was going to class. Like my classmates would be in gym shorts and a hoodie, and I'd be wearing jeans and like a button down. I'm like, I don't know if I really fit in, and um, I think I've always had a desire to like design sports jerseys. So like literally one day I woke up and I went to my advisor and said, hey, like I want to like, do you guys have classes for like uniform designs? And they're like, you're in the wrong major. Like you got to go talk to this guy. So then I talked to a professor in the apparel design. Like luckily my college had both kinesiology and TMD, textiles, merchandising and design program. So like the next day I switched my major with the intent of like designing sports jerseys. And then that just like sort of had me lean more into um, uh, the fashion industry. And then I got into really like Americana, uh, vintage Ralph Lauren and denim and sustainability. And yeah, I was taking classes, and there's this one class where like it was like an introductory sewing class, and the professor like, you need to make a skirt because it's these. I'm like, I'm not gonna make a skirt. Like I want to make something I could use. Can I make a pair of pants? So yeah, I probably pissed off some teachers, but I wasn't interested in fashion. I was interested in clothing, like things you can wear, like a uniform, right? Um, so like I wanted to take my learnings that I learned in class and apply it to the real life. And that's when I discovered entrepreneurship. Like, how can I apply what I'm learning and bring it into the real world? So I started this project of like, I wanted to learn by doing. And as a result, I created Rocky Clark, which was a sustainable men's denim line where we used organic cotton and hemp material, dyed using less water, less energy, made it all in New York City. And that was like my first rodeo into entrepreneurship. And I still take a lot of those lessons and apply them to Smearcase today.
What happened to the business?
COVID.
Ah, okay.
COVID, yeah. So I was deep in it. I raised a successful Kickstarter campaign, and the week before COVID hit, I ran a production run, made 100 pairs of jeans. COVID hit. Nobody was wearing jeans during COVID, and that was just a slow decline. Like I didn't want to pivot to sweatpants and
Sure.
sweatshirts.
Yeah.
I just really loved the history and the storytelling of denim. Um, So it was tough to like I was just so passionate about it. It was my baby. But now when I reflect, like it taught me a lot about entrepreneurship, but it was maybe a little bit more of a passion project than a business. So I just found it was the right time to move on, and here we are.
At the time, were you relying on that for income, or did you have any other gigs going on?
Yeah, so I was working for my dad at the time. I was making bagels at his deli at night. I actually won Best Bagel of New Jersey in 2018,
Amazing.
which is wild. And yeah, I was making bagels at night. During the day, I was working on my clothing brand. And then I had gotten into a really serious bicycle accident, and that's was like I was like, oh man, like is this what I want to be doing? I just really took a step back, took 6 months off work, and then entered the e-commerce business. Worked for some startups there um, prior to Smearcase.
Was that all during COVID, like the bike accident?
The bike accident happened in 2018,
Okay.
and then like 20, and that like woke me up. Like, all right, like if I'm gonna do this clothing business, I got to move to New York, and I got to just go for it. So 2019, I spent that time um, making the prototype pair of jeans and raising the Kickstarter, and then 2020, I was gonna produce, and then just like really try to get this thing profitable.
Got it. All right. And so then you said after that you went to go work for a couple startups in the e-commerce space.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, I worked at Tops. We made baseball cards, and
Yep.
baseball cards just blew up in COVID, and we just
Yep.
made so much money, and we had a great team, and we fought for each other. It was fast paced. It was like we grew the business from 20 to like 140 million in a couple years, and we were just literally printing money. And I learned a ton about e-commerce operations, brand, digital marketing, working with a scrappy team. And then from there, I worked in Web3 for a little bit at a startup, learned just the startup landscape, and that was my last endeavor in corporate America.
Was this was Smearcase brewing in the back of your mind the whole time?
Yeah, so June of 2023, I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. I was just fed up with uh, corporate life. I wanted to do my own thing. It was about a 2-year period where I didn't have a side hustle or a project I was working on, and I was really just itching for something else. And that's when I came up with the idea of Smearcase. And then a week later, I get laid off,
Hmm.
and I'm like, "Wow, look at this."
That's the universe talking.
Yes, I was like, "You have an opportunity to go for it," and that's when I took the opportunity to go for it. I got pushed off the edge, and it was just really, really perfect timing.
Again, kind of for the audience here, the idea is brewing, but knowing what the first step is the hardest part here. So at this point, did you have like at least some sort of roadmap kind of in the back of your mind or on a piece of paper somewhere? Or, once you found out, all right, now's my time, you had to kind of scramble a little bit.
Yeah, that's a so I when I start a business, I do it for selfish reasons. I couldn't find a good pair of jeans, so I made it myself. I couldn't find ice cream that fit into my lifestyle, so I made it myself, right? And what gave me the confidence to turn the jeans into a business was like someone looked at them like, "Whoa, those are unique. Like, where'd you get those?" I said, "Well, I made them. Then, can you make me a pair?" And I did. Same with the ice cream. Like, I wanted an ice cream that fit into my lifestyle, made it, shared it with people. They're like, "Wow, this is really good." And that's when the light bulb, like, "Oh shit, like maybe I have something here." Um, so yeah, my sister and I were just working on just recipes, and once I started to realize the white space in this category and just the direction of health trends, um, how the CPG industry really just aligned with my skill set and my values, that's when I was like, all right, you know, let's see
What
what
could
it's going to
happen here?
take. Yeah, and then just doing
Yeah.
market research about the industry, um, listening to like Halo Top podcasts to see how they did it. And like the first thing, I had just like this V1 of the recipe. And then the first thing that I do is like, how can I build a story around this? So that's when the brand came to be, sort of the voice, the marketing. And then from there, it was like, all right, now like, how do we turn this into a business? What is it actually going to take?
Yeah. Give us the background on the name.
Yeah, so during I love history, I love context. It's so important. And I didn't want to just name it. So like Rocky Clark, my middle name is Rocco and my dog's name was Clark. So I was like, wow, that's a catchy, strong name, right? And it's personally tied to me. Uh, I wasn't gonna name it just Joe's Ice Cream or Dairy. It's such a boring name, right? So I was just doing research on cottage cheese, and I just kept seeing. I had a list of names, and Smearcase just kept jumping off the page, and I was like, interesting. And um, so Smearcase literally means cottage cheese in Dutch.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's from a German term Schmierkäse, which
Okay.
means spreadable cheese. And the Pennsylvania
Okay.
Dutch, when they came to America, they called cottage cheese Smearcase. And I was like, wow, that's really catchy. It's pretty bold. It's very strong. It's different for ice cream. And like to me, it says protein. Um, and I knew like it just had to capture attention and draw you in. Like, what is that? Because I know people would think like, what is like cottage cheese ice cream? Like, what is that? So I wanted that to sort of like correlate. Um, and yeah, the name just sort of stuck from there on out.
Got it. Got it. To the audience listening, I mean, this is not an ad. I've tried, and like I said earlier on in the podcast, my wife and I are using it to potty train our toddler now. It's really good, and it kind of even catches you off guard because my wife loves cottage cheese, and so she really wanted to try it, and she loved it, and I love it, and it's definitely you're undoubtedly onto something. The question I have for you is you're in a very saturated space, right? Like when you think about how much freezer space there is in a supermarket, when you think about all the big, ice cream companies out there, even the companies like Halo Top who have kind of distinguished themselves as the better for you type of ice cream. Clearly that didn't scare you off, but what hurdles or what kind of hurdles have you kind of faced in a saturated space like that?
The saturation didn't scare me at all because, I made some rules before I even went down this rabbit hole. Like I set rules for myself before I even came up with the idea of Smearcase. I knew the next business had to check a couple boxes. It had to align with my values. It had to align with my ikigai, um, a great Japanese sort of philosophy. And I knew the brand had to be truly different, innovative. It had to be unique. It had to be disruptive, right? And it had to be consumable. Those are the boxes I wanted to check before even coming up with an idea. I really took a step back and just like looked inward of what I wanted. So once this idea came, I'm like, wow, that checks all the boxes. It's truly different, truly innovative. It will disrupt the ice cream industry, and it's consumable. So that gave me more confidence of like, all right, now it's a little bit easier to make some noise and not just like I wanted to add to the conversation. I didn't want to just be a part of the conversation. So I think that sort of gave it an edge on stepping into this industry. Um, and like, yes, it's a saturated market, I think, but I think the frozen dessert aisle needs something like this. There's no such thing as high protein ice cream, and there's no such thing as frozen cottage cheese. So we're creating like two new categories within the frozen dessert aisle. You have ice cream, you have frozen yogurt, you have plant-based alternatives, you had keto for a little bit, and now you have FroCo. So all those things, it's like that gives me as a entrepreneur confidence. It gives consumers something novel, right? And it gives the industry something disruptive to sort of rally around.
If you know me, you know that I like to look good and feel good. As an endurance athlete who trains daily, I need my wardrobe to fit the mold. Roan creates performance-driven clothing for your active lifestyle. Each piece is designed for versatility and made with integrity to outfit you for an active life lived on your own terms. The Roan promise is to help you move forever forward. Use code MILE40 for 20% off online and in-store for new customers only. Visit www.rhone.com, that's Rhone spelled RHONE, or find your local store and move forever forward starting today. What keeps you up at night with this kind of business, with this kind of idea? Because I could think of a couple things that would keep me up at night, but I want to hear it from you.
Okay, I want to hear we'll trade. For us right now, it's like it's supply chain. Cottage cheese is on fire, so it's tough to get our hands on that ingredient source, but we have great partners in the space that believe in our mission and believe in us as founders, Drew and I, to, solve for it. That's one thing, I sleep pretty darn good. To be
I
honest with you, I take some magnesium at night and I have a
love
nice
it.
little unwinding routine. But I think like, yeah, so many things, so many random things. But I think I wanted to build a business around my lifestyle.
Yeah.
I wanted it
Well,
to.
I remember you telling me when we spoke a couple weeks ago, you kind of had that idea right around when you were marathon training, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And so talk to me a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, I was training for Running Man, the very first Running Man, and um, I typically don't really crave dessert, but here I am craving ice cream one day after a long run, and I was, I guess, incredibly naive at the time, but I found out just how terrible ice cream is for you. It's high in fat, high in sugar, low in protein, long ingredient list, and I just it's like this I need something to fuel my literal marathon. Um, so I wanted a product that fit into, again, my lifestyle. Like at the end of the night, I would realize like, oh my God, I didn't eat enough today. I didn't get enough protein in today. What easier way to just top off your day than ice cream? So that helped me sleep at night.
Ah, I love that. No, I love it. Look, my Shark Tank hat on. If
Yeah,
I were to put it
please.
on right now, uh, I could see a shark asking you, well, why wouldn't one of the big ice cream players just do this themselves?
Well, I'll tell you what. The Whole Foods category manager reached out to us and said, "Wow, I can't believe I found you guys. I asked all the cottage cheese brands if they would be interested in exploring making a cottage cheese ice cream, and they all said no. The barrier to entry in frozen is so high, and that helps me sleep at night. It's like, man, the more I go on this journey, the more difficult I learn what we're doing is, and that keeps my fire lit. That gives me more confidence of that gives us a bigger moat we can build. Of course, we want competition because that will just fuel validation for the category. Like we want that. Like the best thing for a gas station is another gas station across the street, right? Um, but learning just how difficult it is, I think, gives us that edge. And furthermore, um, the brand is truly different, the product is truly different, and we trademarked FroCo, so nobody else can use that term. And we have a proprietary formula in our we're the first and only ice cream brand to use collagen as a stabilizing agent in their ice cream, and it adds nutritional value and it adds quality to our product. So I don't think anybody wants to touch it, to be honest with you.
I mean, that's amazing, and I agree with you. And I don't know if you and I spoke about the Poppy acquisition recently, off the record, but someone who I was speaking to was talking about how with a lot of the big players out there, just because they're so big right now, the amount of bureaucracy to innovate really kind of gets in the way. So there's very little room for innovation, because even if someone has a good idea, it's really hard to bring the product to market in these bigger companies. And so it kind of really sets the stage for entrepreneurs like that to create a product and then ultimately, see themselves to an exit, given that the demand is there. Do you anticipate it's the same in your space, or is that
Absolutely.
what you're
Yeah.
hoping for?
That's why I left corporate. It was too much red tape. I had great ideas and I wanted to add to the business, but I wasn't allowed to. And that's what these corporations do. There's too much red tape. It's too slow, too much bureaucracy, too many hoops to jump through. And now we're seeing it in the marketplace, in the terms of M&A activity, but also a lot of these corporations are cutting the innovation teams and entrepreneurship programs. So now they're going to acquire innovation. They're too slow to the trends. They don't resonate with the consumer. They're not authentic in their messaging. They're going to come at brands who know the new landscape of marketing, and yeah, and who are doing it to the level of this product aligns with the values of the consumer of today. And they don't want bullshit in their products. They want nutritional value. These are the things that's why entrepreneurship is so important in America. Um, because they're quick to react to, I hate to say trends, but to the conversation that's happening.
Yeah. They're able to meet people where they are. They're not going to be delayed with regards to formulating a response. Whereas in a big corporation, there's generally a lot of work, time, and effort that goes into a response that by the time it's released, it's probably a little outdated. And then that makes a huge difference. But you called out something important, right? And I think this is something a lot of us can relate to is, you know, the frustration that happens and the pent up frustration that happens if you're an innovator in a corporate space. And now, you're leading the growth of this new market segment essentially, and you're creating something that hasn't been done before. And your eye is, and it makes total sense. Your eye is on the prize here. You want to grow this business. You have every right to want to see the business grow from a revenue perspective and to make it successful. But I'm sure you haven't lost sight of the fact that um, you're here because you want to innovate, and you also want to create an innovative culture, and you want to cultivate a culture for innovation. And so you kind of have, as does every founder that's not only been on this show but that exists, you kind of have you have multiple responsibilities, and there's this juggle between the top line and the bottom line, and also cultivating a culture that promotes innovation and entrepreneurship and growth. And how do you juggle the two, right? Because you kind of then find yourself in the shoes of the corporation of like, how do I foster a culture of growth and innovation while also keeping my eye on the bottom line?
Mm, wow, great question. I'm doing this because like I genuinely like just need to do it. Sure, an exit would be fantastic, and that's the ultimate outcome we want to, expect. But like I generally love doing the hard thing. I love the challenge. It's deeply fulfilling. Um, when I think about, culture and, I think like I'm all for ideas. And I think back in my younger days, like I was just such an ideas guy and I, still am. But now I've just really like, what do we actually need to do to move the chess pieces forward? This is a 5D Formula One speed race chess match. And it's moving at the speed of light. You're building it as you fly it, but you can't get caught up in ideas or this feedback loop. You have to actually take action to move things forward. So we're in a place where we're incredibly scrappy. We love doing things ourselves, and I would love the opportunity to lead a team once we get like more resources, uh, more more time under our belt. But right now, I'm just obsessed over the work. Like, I love it. I love doing things myself because I wanna learn every part of the business so that when it comes time to pass it on to somebody else, I know how I want it to be done. I know how the business needs it to get done, and I can speak the same language, so that way, it'll just sharpen myself as a leader of like, "Okay, our corners being cut. Is this actually aligning to the mission, or are we veering off by getting, like, do we want are we what are we going for? Innovation, or are we going for, a profitable business? So it's finding that balance of like making sure everybody's aligned with the mission of like our goal is to sell FroCo right now.
As you're kind of speaking, it kind of and this happens all the time on this show, but you can so easily draw the parallel between this and endurance training essentially, right? Like and I've called this out before that it's those 4 or 5 months leading up to a marathon that are a lot more memorable than the actual race day, right? Because that's where you start to uncover where your strength really lies, and that's where you uncover the areas of weakness and the areas of opportunity. And while I'm sure, an exit at some point is going to be incredible, there's probably going to be a period where you look back on today and what you've gone through since inception, and these moments where it's you and your co-founder, and you're probably going to be beaming thinking about these moments because these are the moments that essentially made you who you are and kind of shape the business. And I feel like I see this in a lot of founders post exit, where it is your baby essentially. When you get there, it, it's almost like no one's going to know how to treat it the way that you do. And right now you're treating it as, diligently as anybody else would, or more than anybody else would, I should say.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, Drew and I talk about that a lot. Like it's easy to get caught up of in the what ifs, when we sell, whatever, but we always draw ourselves back to the reality. Like, you know, I'm gonna remember those times driving back from the farm where we made the first batch, and it was like 10 o'clock at night. We had so much ice cream that we didn't know where to put it, so I had to stop at my parents to drop some off in their freezer. I literally had to throw things out of my freezer to fit ice cream in it. Right, those are the things I'm gonna remember. Yeah, it's the climb up the mountain.
Amazing. Since inception, talk to me about, any particularly tough moments that you're comfortable talking about.
Oh man, I think it was like the decision to actually go for it. Like accepting that, hey, I'm gonna have to pay out of pocket to live for a little bit. I'm gonna have to really sacrifice parts of my personal life. Um, that was pretty tough, but like I just gave it up to God. Like I will be provided for, I will be supported because I know that this mission is what He gave me, and I need to fulfill it. Like I need to do that duty, and the rest will be taken care of. So it was just like giving up that control was really a weight off my shoulders.
When you think about working with a co-founder, did you know your co-founder prior to this?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, we both had clothing brands, so that's how we got in
Okay,
touch. So we
got it.
just had like an entrepreneurial relationship, and a friendship, and just had that inherent trust. And it was easy to go into business with someone like that for sure.
Some tips just for the listeners out there when you think about, the co-founder dynamic. What are some of the key things that, we should be aware of?
Oh wow, yeah. Uh,
It's essentially a marriage.
it's a marriage. We fight like brothers, and we make up like lovers. You know what I mean?
I
Like
love it.
you have to have the difficult conversation. Like I'm full time, so I'm just so in the weeds, and he's part time, so it's like balancing that. I think you just really need an open line of communication, um, and you, like you both have to find your lane of like this is what like I wanted to complement my skill set, right? That's why I brought him on. So it's just reminding each other like, hey, this is like, of course you want crossover and collaboration, but at the end of the day, like you sort of need these silos to really complement each other. Um, but I wanted a business partner going into this endeavor. Like I wanted to build alongside somebody. Of course, there's pros and cons to it, but like it makes just having an accountability partner really that's been such a level up.
Yeah. No, I mean, you brought up a really good point, right? It's that self-awareness of like where your strengths lie and where you need someone to complement the gaps. And I think that that self-awareness is absolutely critical because if you're not self-aware, I think you're going to get in your own way in whatever it is that you're trying to build ultimately. And so thanks for giving us that insight. Um, Joe, I mean, look, man, it's been awesome having you on the show today. I could talk to you for days and I could geek out with you over this. Because I love the product. I love the innovation behind it. And I love the fuel for it. Just um, given your background. I mean, some multiple things have really stood out about speaking to you. But if I think about, what I'll remember from this episode, um, it's that early on, you know, you threw away the fear of failure, and you were able to translate it into lessons along the way, and that's something that's been evident. I feel like this episode's been a little bit different than other episodes because uh, there's something peaceful about you. Like you're not. Tell me if you've heard this before, but you're pretty composed. Like that. I don't know if there's any crack in you here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. I think I rely on my intuition and self awareness, and yeah, I've I've learned a lot in my life. My goal is just to how can I be the best man possible and kill off old parts of myself that I don't agree with, because that's all you have at the end of the day is your values and yeah, and honestly just like reconnecting with my faith and just like really dedicating myself to God has been such a layer of peace that has been brought upon me. So I for sure I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
You got it, man. And I think that's the perfect note to close out on. And for the listeners out there, I really hope you kind of take in that last little excerpt from Joe. Right? It's having the ability to take a step back and really examine within and really examine, um, you know, not only what's important to you, but what perhaps you need to submit yourself to in order to see through your purpose. And by doing that, your potential will then be revealed. And so, Joe, thanks for coming on. Thanks for, you know, letting us in on your world, your life, how it all came to be. And I know I'm rooting for you. And to the listeners out there, please look up Smearcase. Trust me, pick up a pack. You will very much enjoy it. So thanks again, Joe.
Thank you. I appreciate you listening, whoever is out there, and feel free to reach out, get in touch. I would love to hear from you and how much you enjoyed FroCo.
Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed this episode of the Mile 40 podcast, go ahead, subscribe, leave a review, and share the word. Thank you for being a part of the Mile 40 family. And let's unite in showing the world that comebacks are always greater than setbacks.